Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for October 29th, 2025. Well, I've been covering the last couple of days two contrasting dynamics that are defining the strategic situation. There's the potential on the one side for beneficial mutual economic cooperation. And this is related to a series of summits taking place now in Asia, which include President Trump in attendance. He went to the ASEAN summit, which was in Malaysia, where he had several productive meetings, including with President Lula of Brazil and Prime Minister Ibrahim of Malaysia. And he will now be he's on his way to South Korea, where he'll be attending the APEC summit beginning tomorrow. Now, in addition to these positive meetings, he will be meeting, presumably tomorrow, with President Xi Jinping of China. And this meeting was prepared by a number of meetings, including with Treasury Secretary Bessent, to ease the tensions that had developed between the U.S. and China over tariffs, over strategic matters, and so on. And so it appears as though Trump will be able to do what he said he wants to do, which is meet with his friend Xi Jinping and move toward more high-level cooperation, including on economic and strategic matters. Now, these summits and these meetings follow the August-September meetings of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, where besides the leaders of these various countries, including the BRICS, the SCO, Putin, Xi Jinping, Modi of India, there were a number of other bilateral and multilateral meetings with business layers from the various countries. And the whole process is mapping out economic cooperation for the future. Now, we also know that the new Japanese Prime Minister is open to cooperation with Russia and China. And what's on the table are great infrastructure projects, including the Bering Strait Tunnel, rail connections north-south, east-west, the development of the Arctic, the opening of new ports. So there's an incredible array of activity, of cooperation, of the sort that Lyndon LaRouche has emphasized, is the work on physical economic matters, which will serve as a basis for future incentives for peaceful cooperation. So this is really the idea of opening up Eurasia to the West is one of the most important prospects for the future. At the same time, it's a red flag for the City of London Wall Street interests that are committed to maintaining a unipolar order. That is one of an imperial predatory system centered around the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, and so on. So these developments are extremely positive developments. But we see the countercurrents coming. You hear it in the discussion process in Europe. The French talking about sending troops to Ukraine. The British now talking about extending the nuclear umbrella over Germany. The Germans talking about the possibility of deploying nuclear weapons in Germany for protection in the expectation of a war with Russia. Why are they expecting a war with Russia? Why not negotiate? And here's where you see the problem in the West and the other current that in the present dynamic situation. This is connected to the self-destruction of the economies. There's hand-wringing going on in Germany from the Mittelstand, that is the medium and small business companies that are involved in most of the technological advance. The leaders of these countries have no positive self-reflection. They want to blame Putin. They want to blame the Chinese, blame anything but their own foolish policies. Now we have a similar situation developing of great danger in the Caribbean and South America. The move to have NATO, or not NATO, U.S. naval involvement in the Caribbean, in attacks on Venezuela, possibly preparing for an invasion, in harsh rhetoric directed toward Colombia. And what's the ostensible issue? Drugs. Well, shooting up these small boats in the Caribbean is not going to significantly dampen drug traffic. But it makes it clear again to the world that the United States is committed to using war when there are other diplomatic and business economic measures potential. For example, you want a war on drugs? Go after the money laundering from banks, hedge funds, financial institutions that make drug trafficking profitable. Without them, the drug traffic networks would dry up completely. So instead of shooting up these small boats in the Caribbean without proof or evidence that these are drug boats, go after the ones who are using their institutions for tens of billions of dollars of money laundering. That's something that should be done. Then you have an additional problem I've been talking about the last couple of days, which is the increased frequency of warnings of the popping of all the various debt bubbles, the bond bubble, the AI bubble, the debt bubble as a whole. What we're seeing is that there are new warnings every day that instead of addressing the underlying cause, which is the insolvency of corporations, the extension of credit to pay debt as opposed to invest in real economy, instead of addressing that, they're doing bailouts and with the idea of kicking the can down the road and allowing the defaults to occur at some better moment. Well, what's a better moment? Instead of addressing it now, this is their approach. Now, let me give you a typical warning that are of the sort that are coming across my desk. This is from someone named Art Wilmarth, who was a member of George Washington's law faculty from 1986 to 2020. That is George Washington University's law faculty. And prior to that, he was a partner in the Jones Day Washington, D.C. office and has a familiarity with financial manipulations. Here's what Wilmarth said, quote, "Private sector credit booms, sometimes referred to as Minsky cycles, have been the leading cause of systemic financial crises in major developed nations during the past 150 years. We are currently experiencing an enormous credit boom. Warning signs of an imminent financial meltdown are flashing in markets for crypto assets, corporate equity and debt securities, and consumer loans. Large financial institutions are highly leveraged and vulnerable to a sudden economic turndown." Well, I think that's a pretty accurate summation of what we're getting from a number of financial commentators. Now, let me then give you how Lyndon LaRouche addresses this. And this is from a book he wrote that was published in 2005 on the eve of the 2007-2008 mortgage-backed security crisis. LaRouche was writing this, looking down the road and seeing the fact that there's no way to sustain the bubble that was being propped up based on a wild extension of credit for mortgages. Here's what LaRouche wrote, and it's in his book, The Earth's Next 50 Years. "We are caught like a ship in a storm with an already onrushing world crisis, which threatens to plunge the planet as a whole into a new dark age. It were still possible to save the world economy from this horror, but we shall not survive without abrupt, radical measures, such as those specified by LaRouche, which are now again under consideration, including among those who are meeting in Asia." Now remember, this was published in 2005. In July 2007, he said there is no way to get through this situation without a banking crash. And that next fall and through 2008, 2009, we saw that happen. And what did they do? Did they address the underlying problem? No, they pumped money, increased the debt, and pushed it down the road. And we've had a series of crises since then, including the 2021 repo crisis, which is now being repeated, where there's not enough liquidity to cover the short-term needs of corporations and banks. So the present crisis is following the same path that LaRouche addressed in 2005. The question is, will we learn from our experience? Will we learn that the solution rests with the kind of developments that are taking place in Asia? Or will we continue blindly down a path which means that ultimately we face financial ruination in the West and the likelihood of war? I think it's now time that we listen to the words of Jose Lopez Portillo, the president of Mexico, who met with LaRouche in 1982 when Mexico was going through its debt crisis, a profound debt crisis then. And Lopez Portillo said years later, "It is time to listen to the wise words of Lyndon LaRouche." I'll repeat that again today. It's time to listen to LaRouche. You can find the book, The Earth's Next 50 Years, somewhere. I find Google, see where it is. Perhaps if you're in contact with our office, someone can help you get a copy. And also then today at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, I'll be speaking with Helga Zepp-LaRouche, and we'll take up in depth this crisis.